Dear viewers, due to continuous rise in the number of COVID cases and the fears of a new wave, we are forced to switch the program to voice-over mode for a few days. As soon as the situation gets back to normal, we'll be back with the original format of the program. Thank you for your cooperation. Hello and welcome to another episode of the new series. I am Pooja Dwivedi, and in this segment today we are going to discuss about the budget of 22-23. This is very important, and before I talk about the highlights, kindly also look at the discussion on economic survey where I have talked about the highlights of it. So, budget has been tabled in the parliament by the finance minister, and that is of course under Article 112, which talks about annual financial statement. That is the common parlance, we call it budget. There are certain highlights that we have to talk about. First is the PM Gati Shakti, inclusive development, climate action, and energy transition are among the 4 priority areas. That means infrastructure that is inclusive in nature, making it sustainable with respect to climate change, and that is possible through energy transition. So CAPEX has been pushed a lot, and this budget is very much investment-based budget. Highway expansion has to be done by 25,000 kilometers. That means more capital expenditure on infrastructure, giving boost to employment. But that should be sustainable with respect to climate. Rupees 60,000 crore on Nal Se Jal scheme will be spent, which is under the Ministry of Jal Shakti. The aim is to provide piped drinking water to every rural home by 2024. It is a component of the government's Jal Jeevan mission. 5 river link projects across various states will also occur so that any state which has excessive supply of water can transfer the water to water deficit states. Rupees 48,000 crore to be spent on PM housing scheme, Northeast infrastructure development. That means the importance of Northeast is a lot. With respect to aggression of China, connectivity and infrastructural help should be given to Northeast so that radicalization is not imminent or prominent in those areas. Metro rail systems across the country to be standardized as per Indian condition and needs, in addition to being built with an innovative way of financing. That means more investment, channelized form of investment. Separately, 400 new generation Vande Bharat trains with better efficiency will be brought in over the next 3 years. Also, private sector has to be engaged. The budget focuses on promoting zero budget natural farming and discouraging the so-called chemical-based agriculture, specifically after the Green Revolution happened. Now, zero-budget natural farming. It is a method of chemical-free agriculture drawing from traditional Indian practices. And a very important name comes Subhash Palekar. In the mind, Subhash Palekar, it was originally promoted by himself. And he developed in the mid-1990s as an alternative to the Green Revolution methods that were driven by chemical fertilizers and pesticides and everything else. And it is actually agroecology. The budget is focusing on that. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has expanded the Emergency Credit Line Guarantee Scheme to expand the credit availability to medium, micro, small and medium enterprises in the hospitality sector because it is badly bruised. Now, 𝐃𝐫𝐢𝐬𝐧𝐥𝐶 scheme basically was expanded and introduced in the time of COVID-19, and it helped a lot to the MSME sectors. We will talk about the impact of that as well. The credit guarantee cover has been expanded by rupees 50,000 crore, bringing the total 𝐃𝐫𝐢𝐬𝐧𝐥𝐶 scheme till date to rupees 5 lakh crore. The center will roll out an open platform for the national digital health ecosystem. We already know about the National Digital Health Mission, which is actually a complete digital health ecosystem. It has been launched with 4 key features such as Health ID, personal health records, DigiDoctor and health facility registry. Okay, and this will use the uniqueness of digital arena, and also which has been National Digital Health Mission will also take into account a national tele-mental health program because it has been worsened by the COVID-19 pandemic, because there were isolation and lockdown, distancing, all these procedures as man as a social animal has taken a toll on the mental health of people. The government has allocated rupees 60,000 crores for Nal Se Jal scheme, and this will be with an aim to cover 3.8 additional households with tap water. The union budget has also proposed to set up 75 digital banking units in 75 districts by scheduled commercial banks. There will also be a focus on using payment platforms that are economical and user-friendly. The PM Gati Shakti plan will be driven by roads, railways, airports, ports, mass transport, waterways and logistics infrastructure. PM Gati Shakti Master Plan for expressways will be formulated in 22-23 to facilitate faster movement of people and goods. That means time efficient, climate change efficient. That means climate change and greenhouse gases are they are driven by each other. So for that as well. So the basic aim of the Prime Minister Gati Shakti project was to ensure integrated planning and implementation of infrastructure projects in the next 4 years, with focus on expediting works on ground, saving costs and also creating jobs. Okay? And it will subsume the National Infrastructure Pipeline that was launched in the year 2019. Also keep this in mind. The National Highways Network will be expanded by 25,000 kilometers in 22-23. Rupees 20,000 crore will be invested through various sources in addition to public investment. A battery swapping policy will be brought out and interoperability standards will be formulated for electric vehicle sector. That means one of the pillar of the budget is climate change and energy transition. So that is a part of it. Private sector will also be encouraged to develop efficient solution. The finance minister has announced the auction of 5G spectrum in 2022. With this, India will join other countries around the world which have begun rolling off 5G services. The government is set to introduce a framework to allow consumers to choose from more than one power distribution company. That means it strikes on the monopoly. The budget proposes to allocate additional rupees 19,500 crore for production-linked incentive scheme for manufacturing high-efficiency solar modules, with priority on fully integrating manufacturing of various components. Production-linked incentive scheme is providing incentives to domestic manufacturers so that whenever there is a distortion in the supply chains, it doesn't contribute to the supply logs in the country. Okay? And the outlay for public capex, that is capital expenditure, has been stepped up sharply by 35.4% from rupees 5.54 lakh crore to rupees 7.50 lakh crore. The outlay will be 2.9% of the GDP. So it's a capex push. The Parvatmala announcement with 8 ropeway projects in 22-23 will ease transport-linked congestion in hilly areas and also push tourism, which is of course very badly affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Budget has proposed to introduce digital rupee using blockchain, which can be regulated by the RBI and not which doesn't have any sort of regulation such as cryptocurrency. Finance Minister announced that the Ujjwala scheme, which is aimed at providing clean cooking fuel to poor households through LPG connections, they would be extended to a further 1 crore households. The government has announced that an independent system operator in the natural gas transmission sector will be set up for booking and coordination of common carrier capacity to ensure unbiased allocation of natural gas transportation capacity. This will also give boost to transparency and much more accountability. The finance minister has announced only a marginal slippage as against a budget target of 6.8% of GDP. In 2021, the fiscal deficit is estimated at 6.9%. Next year, in line with the glide path of consolidation, the centre has pegged to bring down its deficit to 6.4%. India will manufacture 400 new energy-efficient Vande Bharat trains in the next 3 years. That apart, with an eye on farmers, the rail sector will also develop one station, one product, which will leverage local produce carried on the railways. Bringing out new products, Railway will also roll out postal railways for carriage of parcels, giving a thrust to a new business area. Both centre and the state government employees tax deduction limit should be increased from 10% to 14% to help the social security benefits of state government employees and bring them at par with the central government employees. Ending the ambiguity over the taxation on gains stemming from investment in cryptocurrency, gains from such investment will be levied at 30%. That's a huge amount. However, losses on account of such investment will not be allowed to set off. Tax returns can now be revised for omission and mistakes, including declared income not reported. And the changes can be made through one-time window till 2 years from the end of the assessment year on the payment of tax. Surcharge on transfer of any long-term capital gains has been capped at 15%. Minimum alternate tax rate for cooperatives at 18.5% has been reduced to bring it with the parity of the rate of corporates so that they are not at the loss. Also, the surcharge for cooperatives has been reduced to 7% from the 12% of total income ranging between rupees 1 to 10 crores. Tax returns can now be revised for omission and mistakes. We have already talked about that. So let's move on to the impacts. Now for metro standardization, the impacts are such that currently 2 metro rail systems operate in the country based on gauge and with multiple rolling stock vendors. Standardization would help in lowering the cost and exports. Of course, standardization always works in that direction itself. With the expansion of 𝐃𝐫𝐢𝐬𝐧𝐥𝐨𝐚𝐝, an earlier report by the economists from SBI highlighted how the scheme had prevented lakhs of MSMEs from being downgraded to non-performing assets because government was helping through the expansion of emergency credit. Nal Se Jal scheme, by providing more infrastructure to provide tapped water, it will give capex push. That means capital expenditure push, more employment, more spending on infrastructure is always in the capex. And it is a concerted rural focus. So rural economy is also in the mind. Digital currency, when official digital currency will be launched, this takes forward the government's idea of digital inclusion. And this will also be regulated by the RBI. So accountability will also be there. And not a lot of fluctuation will be there as there is in the cryptocurrency. The expansion of highways networks and building of new expressways is likely to help connect smaller towns around metro city in a more efficient manner. And this will take off the loads on resources and distribute it more evenly. It will help congestion around urban centers. The battery swapping policy to mitigate concerns over space crunch for expanding electric vehicle infrastructure, make electric vehicles more viable and lower the range anxiety for buyers. The government is aiming to reform the sector of power distribution, often described as the weak link in India's power sector through competition. The centre had earlier actually announced intentions to introduce an amendment to the Electricity Act to de-license the power distribution sector, but had not introduced the bill in earlier sessions after it faced an opposition from the state governments. The provision will actually offer choice to consumers in the distribution sector, eventually aimed at giving consumers more choice in picking the utility of their choice among multiple service providers. With respect to production-linked incentive scheme, this is a step in the direction of achieving 280 gigawatt of installed solar capacity by 2030 because more incentives will be given to manufacture of equipments related to clean energy. The government believes public investment will be necessary to support private investment because that is of course needed in the hand-holding stage and creating demands. Parvatmala, if we talk about the impacts on Parvatmala, this will ease transport-linked congestion in hilly areas and push tourism. With respect to digital currency, introduction of central bank digital currency will boost digital economy and lay down a solid plan of the government to have a public digital currency. There was a much needed clarity to the investors in various cryptocurrencies, and earlier the government had also announced the introduction of a digital rupee based on blockchain technology. For natural gas, it is the changes and the digital base for natural gas is aimed at addressing concerns of bias in allocation of gas and of gas transportation capacity by players such as GAIL involved in the transportation of natural gas. So there will be a database and the database will put accountability on the providers. If we talk about challenges with respect to zero budget natural farming, if it wants to give a boost, it is nice sounding. But the problem is whether these will be adopted by farmers on the ground. Low yields and no premium realization on organic produce will be a deterrent for farmers, and also we will need to see whether the focus of natural farming is going to be a prelude to rationalization of subsidies in urea and other chemical fertilizers. Over 5G, there are several issues that would need to be considered. First is the price of spectrum. There have been repeated demands to reconsider the pricing of spectrum, lowering the base price. Questions have also been raised whether private players have the financial muscle to place exorbitant bids. There has been no discussion over MSP, which has been at the core of farmer protests since a long period of time. There were no mentions of Manrega, which supported lakhs and lakhs of rural workers when pandemic hit the economy and all the other work was not working. The defense sector finds not a lot of mention. So These are the challenges. With respect to the question, let's see. With reference to the budget of 2022-23, critically analyze the tone of it by mentioning its important highlights in 250 words. So that's it for today. Tomorrow we shall meet again with another segment. Until then, stay updated and thank you so much for watching.